This video is brought to you by Law Excellence IAS Academy.
Dear students, good morning. Let us start the discussion on today's newspaper, that is 15th April 2019. The first article, Necessary Steps to Ending Poverty. So this article states that the government shall spend more on universal basic services like health and education rather than on income transfers to eliminate poverty. It means he gives preference to basic services. So basic services here mean health, education, and infrastructure, etc. These will be helpful in building the capabilities of the citizen, and these capabilities are essential to reduce the poverty. So here, let us see the other argument. Few days back, there is an article that is jobs are doles. So capability building itself is sufficient. Our opportunities also need to be built. That is the first question. And the second, what about the people who do not have capabilities because of other factors? Let's take old age population. How these people have to survive in this particular country? So the universal basic income supporters, what they argue is income transfers are easy to make. And the second, once the income sustainability comes to the people, their focus automatically shifts towards health and education, the standards of living. So the basic income, if it is ensured for the people, that makes their priorities different. So they move away from fulfilling food, etc., to gaining health and education to sustain those benefits. So this is what the proponents say. But let us see it from the economic dimension. Fiscal space, when it increases, it leads to deficit. So which causes more deficit? Universal basic income kind of projects need to be taken up only by the state. As the state takes up this, the fiscal deficit is bound to increase. The PM Kisan, after it was launched, the fiscal deficit in India got overshot. So basic income programs can lead to macroeconomic instability. On the other hand, basic services can be provided through different approaches. Different approaches, I mean, through insurance-based mechanisms, public-private partnerships, etc. So where public resources alone are not necessary. So that way, from economic dimension, UBS is more prudent compared to UBI. But politically, when you are paying some money to a person directly, that also converts into vote bank. So our people are looking for political benefit along with poverty elimination. So poverty elimination in India has more become a political slogan rather than upliftment of the livelihood needs of the people. That is how he tries to say it as. But again, what is poverty? Is it income deprivation or is it capability deprivation? So if you are given capabilities, you will gain a job and you will also gain an income. That is one argument. So making the people to fish rather than giving them the fish. So once you give them the fish, if their hunger is fulfilled, then automatically they have higher objectives. That is the another aspect of this particular argument. But one thing for sure is, in a country, all the people are not equal. And all the people are also not born equal. It means intellectual capacities of the different people are different. So people, let's take physically handicapped. They need that one or the other support from the government. And the second thing is the marginalized old age population. So people who are not having access to the mainstream economic priorities, then these people need to be provided with benefit one or the other way. So for the author's sake, he argues that universal basic services need to be focused. But in Europe, which are the developed countries, there also basic income schemes are working. For this, what is the counter the author makes? They first invested on basic services, then they are moving towards basic income kind of programs. And the nature of poverty is different there and here. In India, we have the absolute poverty. There, what is called as relative poverty that is existing. So when we have so much of destitutes, capability building do not happen overnight. It takes years together. So at least in the meanwhile, we need to have income transfers. If you take the examples of South America, Brazil, Argentina, in these countries, income transfers were able to reduce malnutrition. The same is the story in most of the African countries. How a question can be asked on this in this area. So if poverty has to be reduced in the country, more than the income transfers, the universal basic services are the need of the hour. Do you agree with this statement? And give support to argument. Something kind of this question can come up over here. The next article, a pathway to office with power. So here, before getting into the article, two beautiful statements which we have to see to take to our examination. One is J.S. Mill's statement which states that to lay their liberties at the feet of even a great man, or to trust him with power which enable him to subvert their institutions. So these are the two things that can undermine the democracy. What does that mean? So, even before the great man, we shall not leave our liberties. We shall not trust them with our liberties. And the second thing, if the institutions are subverted, the democracy will be in peril. So, he essentially says that liberties and institutions need to be protected at any cost to protect the democracy in a given country. And the second thing, Ambedkar says, the Indian history is entirely filled with great people, and as if like no others matter in history. It means we have an attitude to subvert ourselves, to subsume ourselves before the so-called great people. It means charismatic leadership is very much prominent and emotional with the Indian people. So we talk about Indira Gandhi, but we do not talk about the communities, society, how it has emerged, everything as part of our Indian learning. So Indian attitude is filled with submissiveness towards greater leadership. So after this, let us understand office with power. So this article argues that Dalits in India have office without power. So we shall move from office without power to office with power. So in this context, let's understand the Ambedkar ideas. So in history, Ambedkar was able to get from Ramsay MacDonald, the British Prime Minister, that separate electorates. What do we mean by separate electorates? Here, Dalits will elect the Dalit leader. It means only the Dalits are allowed to vote in that constituency. Today what we have are the reserved constituencies. In the reserved constituencies, Dalits will be the contestants. The voters will be from every community. So, as Gandhi took Fastan to death in Errawada prison, Pune Pact has come into existence. In this Pune Pact, reserved constituencies were given in the place of these separate electorates. Here Ambedkar later proposed one thing, that is bringing in primaries. Primaries means before the election. So candidate has to be selected by the particular people of the constituency. Let's take in USA primaries exist from TDP who has to contest from a particular constituency. This will be based on this primaries. Let's take XYZ of the TDP. They stand in for race. Then the cadre of the TDP will vote in their favor. Finally, one among them will be made as the contestant by the TDP. So rather than getting them from above, from the centralized leadership, these shall emerge from the bottom of the pyramid. So if this was there, all the Dalit leaders and contestants would have come from the people rather than being dropped from above. So that system is not existing in India. Today, a Dalit contestant will be decided by a party high command, and he will be more loyal to the party high command rather than the people and identity which he has to serve. So this has been failed our democracy, or this has failed the Dalit leadership to emerge. So however, the BSP Bahujan Samajwadi Party was able to give an identity to Dalit politics. But where this identity has come from, normally either it is OBCs or various castes in India, they get their political identity through political mobilization. But here the political identity is not coming through that. It has come through reservations in administrative positions. The reservations which were given to them finally led to an association that was Backward and Minority Communities Employee Federation. Then It took a political shape at a later date as BSP. So, the reservations in politics did not lead to office with power, but reservations in administrative positions have led to office with power. So, author says it is the time we need to reinvent our political system so that all the sections of the society will have due respect and due distribution of power rather than getting it concentrated in few individuals and few communities. That is what office with power mean. So, the next article, highway hurdle. So normally we take shortcuts for the political benefits rather than taking the path of established rules and procedures. This is why most of the policies and developmental initiatives fail in India. So here this article is about Chennai to Madurai highway. So for political needs, this highway is changed from Chennai to Salem. So it is the pet project or electoral interest of Mr. Chief Minister. So no environmental impact assessment was done. No impact on the livelihoods of the rural people and the farmers was undertaken. Just the project is being rushed through. The Supreme Court has stalled this project. But we need to understand one thing. So any of the infrastructure project need to go with the due procedure rather than hurrying it through one or the other shortcuts. The cost to the environment, the cost to the society, all need to be taken into consideration. So environmental impact assessment, social impact assessment, followed by rehabilitation, resettlement, these has to weigh for the infrastructure projects. If the people are forced to drift away from their land, ultimately it leads to antagonism to the state itself. And the next is secrets and agents. This is about Julian Assange, the WikiLeaks founder. When Ecuador ended his protection asylum, he was arrested by the British police. So here, how shall we see Julian Assange as? As an person who is a whistleblower, or as a journalist, or a criminal who has leaked the important government information. So, as a whistleblower, if we see, it is an invitation for the government to change its procedures and processes. And if we see as a journalist, obviously he has a responsibility to reveal the world about what is happening, how the human rights violations is going on. And the third thing is, if he has brought in the information which can cause more harm to the society than good, so government can save certain information, believing that release of that information can cause more harm than good. So if he has released such an information, then he has to be considered as a criminal. So among these three roles, what he has released is the surveillance system of the government, and the second is the human rights violations by the American state. So from this perspective, he more appears like a whistleblower rather than like a criminal. But however, state system works in a different way. So in Sweden, there are cases of sexual assault against him, and he can be punished or silenced on those particular cases. So in this case, the state and citizen relationship has to be in such a way that the transparency has to be given the priority over the secrecy. And even if that is secretive, there has to be a specific reasons for that. In the name of the secrecy, if the government is trying to take away the life, liberties, and rights of the citizens, that is to the peril of the humanity. That's what we have to state over here. A tale of two manifestos. This is about BJP and Congress manifesto. I am not concerned with the politics over here. This how the national security is seen from two large parties in this country, and if tomorrow they come to power, how the security will move forward. Let me tell you this way. In USA, there is something called National Strategy Document, National Security Strategy Document. Now, in India, do we have anything like that? So, do we assess our threats in the long run? So, we take ad hoc tactical decisions rather than the strategic decisions. So, if our armed forces, if they prepare a strategy document with a vision for the next 10, 15, 20 years, then obviously tactics do not matter. That provides a direction, that provides for depoliticization of our security strategy. In India, national security is politicized like never before. So, our take home point is a long term strategy doctrine has to exist in India too. And the second thing, we have zero tolerance towards terrorism. Who are the terrorists? We have outsiders and insiders. And the terrorism is taken as a form of extremism, ideological extremism too. So, do we need to see from zero tolerance dimension? Can we give out a blanket operational autonomy to the security forces? Don't you think it leads to more and more human rights violations? So, zero tolerance does not mean giving a blank check to the forces to take or to act to their will. Always there has to be civilian control on the armed forces, that is in the interest of the democracy. So, the first thing, Congress manifesto talks about welfare of the security forces. If you remember, a CRPF Jawan has released a video on the state of affairs of the force over there. Here, any person who is being kept at high altitude and then extremism affected areas for the long periods of time, he may be demotivated. So there has to be a clear policy how many months a person once posted has to be stated over there. And the second, there has to be a policy which has to ensure that the terrorism be dealt holistically rather than in piecemeal. And in this context, Armed Forces Special Powers Act, it has given huge power to deal a situation of extremity. And it has been complained in Manipur and most of the northeast regions, leading to human rights violations. So the tactical or operational freedom our forces have to have, and at the same time, controlling their force and power, these two are essential. You need to balance accountability and authority. So you are giving a gun, and you also need to ensure the account for the bullets which are being fired from it. Accountability and authority shall be balanced with each other. So, Armed Forces Special Powers Act will be revisited. Obviously, armed forces will be disturbed by it. And what the BJP says is, it is not going to look into that matter, and it will also extend this population register to other parts of India. And then a repeal of the Article 370. These are the things which are there in BJP manifesto. So these can deepen the existing problems rather than creating the solutions. From this, the author says that the Congress has a deeper understanding of India's security challenges compared to BJP. Because BJP's understanding of the security challenges can be more divisive. So let's not worry about the politics over here. Remember, India needs a long-term focus to deal with its security challenges. Second thing is, the people shall not be seen as enemies. We have to understand them as partners in fight against terrorism. And terrorism is not just the fight of the civilian, the fight of the military. It is to be the fight of the society at large. These are the points we need to remember. Politics and military. So today, there are few comments made by the people in responsible positions. Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath has called Indian Army as Modi ki Sena. So, Army is an institution. Previously, we saw J.S. Mill's statement. Protect your institutions from every person, how great he may be. Army is an institution. If you politicize the army, then army starts interfering with the civilian life. It is not good for the democracy. If you see Pakistan, what makes the Pakistan army and Indian army different? And Pakistan army is highly politicized and craving for power. Indian army is neutral. Even in the midst of the crisis, when Indira Gandhi was the Prime Minister, Mr. Manekshaw clearly stated that, honey, my nose is long, I don't interfere with yours, and you don't interfere with my work. Remember this. This is what Manekshaw said to Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. So, sarcastically he said, though my nose is long, it does not mean I interfere with your work. In this case, so military, if it keeps away from the politics, organization get more professionalized. Today we are seeing military officers making the political statements, political people making the military statements, and even superseding certain officers. General Bipin Rawat was promoted as the army chief. Then it was said that probably there is some politicization which is happening. So, politicization of army in the long run is not good for the democracy. It can become a Frankenstein monster that can kill the master itself. We are seeing that in Africa and everywhere. Let us respect the professionalism and hold the professionalism of Indian Army. Opposition to move to Supreme Court again for 50% paper trail verification. So what is this? So almost 9,000 crore rupees is been spent on this electronic equipment. So though VVPATs have been created, the Election Commission argues to count one machine for one constituency. Now, the Supreme Court stated that at least 5 machines have to be counted for a constituency. The opposition is demanding that there has to be at least 50% of the papers have to be verified to ensure that the process happens smoothly. And then polls happen in North Korea too. Let's not equate it with democracy. So democracy, we have procedural democracy, substantive democracy. The procedural democracy deals with elections. The substantive democracy deals with freedom, equality, fraternity, secularism, all these factors. So democracy has to be more identified with substantive democracy, which is ends of the democracy, not with the just elections, which are the procedural part of the democracy. That is what the essence of this article. So if elections are being glorified, then the democracy will be seen only from a minuscule lens or from a myopic lens. That's what we have to understand. Finally, thank you very much and all the best. Have a good day.